My name is Kirsten Delegard, and I'm the project director for the Mapping Prejudice project, which is based in the Borchard Map Library at the University of Minnesota. I am here today to tell you why we decided to start Mapping Prejudice, and why, after 2 years of work, we are more convinced than ever that this work is critical for our community. We launched Mapping Prejudice because we wanted to create a new kind of map. This map would make visible something that is invisible to the casual observer: all of the racial covenants or racially restrictive deeds in Minneapolis. Racial covenants or racially restrictive deeds are legal codicils that were embedded into property deeds. Their purpose was to bar people who were not white from buying or even occupying the parcels of land to which they were attached. There is still a lot that we don't know about covenants, but even though our research is still ongoing, we do have a couple of big insights about why we should care about these discriminatory deeds. Covenants were the first and ultimately the most powerful instrument of residential segregation in 20th century American cities. Before covenants were put into place in 1910, Minneapolis was not an especially segregated city. But within 20 years, covenants had reshaped the urban landscape, pushing African Americans into ever smaller sections of the city. My interest in racial covenants grew out of my determination to shine new light on some of the darker aspects of the past in my hometown. I wanted to unravel what seems to be a contradiction. In many quarters, Minneapolis is heralded as a model metropolis. It's admired for its arts, its parks, its welcoming climate for sexual diversity, its volunteerism, its robust economy. But the city also has some of the highest racial disparities in the country. Lots of people have pointed this out, but I wanted to contribute to this conversation by looking to the past to explain how we got to this point. My goal was to unearth the history of race and racism in a city that sometimes likes to pretend that it has neither. For years, I imagined how powerful it would be to map racial covenants. I had heard about these deeds for years. I wanted to illuminate this history that I felt had actually been willfully forgotten. I wanted to show that segregation in Minneapolis was not simply de facto, the result of soft bias or income inequality or personal preference. The segregation that we have today, which serves as the foundation for many of our contemporary racial disparities, is not some kind of natural state. Instead, it is the product of decades of sustained racist policies. When I first imagined mapping covenants, I had no idea what was involved. Before this project, no one has ever tried to create a comprehensive map of racial covenants for an American city. And now, after we've been working on this project for about 2 years, I understand why. This is a massive undertaking. And you might be wondering right now, why would we bother? Why would we decide to undertake a project of this kind 50 years after these deeds were made illegal by the Fair Housing Act? Why focus on the past when there's so much work to be done in the present? My hope is that once you look at our map and read these deeds, you will have your own answers to this question. But as a team, we have 3 big ideas that continue to animate our work. First, as I've already said, we are living with the legacies of these policies. Covenants created the segregation that we have today in Minneapolis. This segregation undergirds racial disparities in education, wealth, employment, health. Inequities in housing are particularly acute. A recent analysis by the Star Tribune revealed that Minneapolis actually has the highest gap between Black and white homeownership rates for any major metropolitan area in the country. And number 2, we think that our database and map will be valuable tools for social change. Our goal is to get this map and this database into the hands of as many people as possible. We want to see these resources used to imagine and implement effective policies and programs that can erode racial disparities. And number 3, we want to change our collective understanding of the past. This is the only way that we're going to find the political will necessary to drive sometimes controversial and difficult policy changes. I'm going to make a bold statement here. As a community, we need to be acknowledging redlining and covenants, and we need to stop talking about Minneapolis and other northern cities as places that did not have segregation. In Minneapolis, racial covenants did the work of Jim Crow. They were used to build what amounted to a hidden system of American apartheid. We believe that this map that we are building can help to shift our collective conversation. I think that we need to move beyond our fixation on individual pathologies, cultures of poverty, and personal choices. It is time to grapple with the way that structural racism has shaped Minneapolis. So, as I've already said, I knew that a visual representation of racial restrictions would be an effective way to catalyze community conversations about the connections between the past and the present. But this kind of map cannot be made by a single person, and I am so lucky to have found such brilliant collaborators who were able to bring this concept to life. Mapping Prejudice would have never been more than an idea without Penny Peterson, who spent several months in the Property Records Office at Hennepin County unearthing the 1,500 covenants that became the data points for our initial map. Penny's initial research also gave us the language that we needed to automate the search for these deeds. Penny is a veteran researcher who knows more about historic property records than anyone else in the state of Minnesota. She's also a published author who has written 2 books about the history of Minneapolis. And Penny's research would have remained nothing more than a very impressive spreadsheet without Kevin Nerman Solberg, our GIS, data, digital, and web design expert. Kevin is a graduate student at the University of Minnesota and also an employee at the Borchard Map Library. He is also a published historian who has written over battles over contested urban space in Minneapolis. And finally, Mapping Prejudice could have never grown into what it is today without a nurturing home. And this was provided by Ryan Mackey, the head of the Borchard Map Library. Ryan found the resources we needed to build an unconventional project that could not be contained by traditional disciplinary boundaries. I am so grateful for his vision and the support of his bosses at the University of Minnesota Libraries. So our team is working to make this history, but we can't do it without you. We have to have the help of citizen researchers for this project, and we are recruiting people like you to help us convert historic property deeds into mappable data. We've created an online interface that allows you to read and transcribe these deeds. And we have 2 reasons for doing the work in this way. First, we simply can't build the map without your help. But second, we want you to read these documents for yourself. So please listen to what our team has to say about covenants and how they fostered racial injustice. But don't take our word on this history. Sign on to our online portal and see these covenants for yourself. We hope that you take away from this experience a better understanding of how race shaped the urban landscape of Minneapolis. And we hope that this will inspire conversations with friends, with families, with neighbors, and ultimately with elected officials. To learn more and to find out exactly how you can help with this groundbreaking effort, please go to our website, www.mappingprejudice.org. Thank you.